Hello, this is Elif Gulmen and welcome to Puzzle the News podcast. Today I will be talking to the one and only Hala Hanina. She is well known for her work in speaking up for women's rights in Gaza. She is also currently studying her PhD at Newcastle University. Hala has gained popularity amongst the Newcastle community for speaking up for the people in Palestine. And Hala, I know you, from what I have heard at protests, at demonstrations, from what you have said on the microphone. But for people who are going to be listening right now, a lot of them don't know you at all. So would you like to briefly explain who you are?
Thank you so much, Elif, and thank you so much for everyone who's listening. I'm Hala, Palestinian refugee from Gaza. I'm a third-generation descendant from my family who became refugees forcibly by the Israeli militias in 1948, and they went to Gaza. I am a former dentist, and now I'm doing a PhD in Sociology and Politics, focusing on Palestinian women at the intersection of Israeli colonial violence and patriarchal violence. I did my research project in Gaza for 12 months and it was very successful. It was about mobilizing the local community to combat domestic violence, from like grassroots local people to the decision makers. And we were able to do that in 12 months. It was amazing. But unfortunately, it was cut early by the Israeli genocide, who have killed multiple of the leaders, many of the survivors, and the people, participants in the community, and also demolished all the buildings we've done our activism at. I'm a woman activist mainly, but focusing more broadly on any oppression. So political oppression and Israeli settler colonialism is among like the basic and the most important things I'm focusing on. I was most of a local activist when I was in Gaza, a little bit like political activism with parliaments, ministers and others who we used to meet in Gaza to advocate for a free Palestine. But after I went outside like a few days before the 7th of October to the UK, I had to focus more on the broader politics and the role of the UK, USA, and such countries in the settler colonialism of Israel and Palestine, and this atrocious genocide committed against my people. And since that time, I'm more focusing on that than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from what you've explained, I just want to understand more about your women's activism and what you have done for women's rights in Gaza. So if we can have a bit more of a history about what you were doing whilst there before coming here to Newcastle, what shaped your work, and how did you face the challenges that you were seeing while there? If you would like to explain, broaden a bit more about what you have done.
Like when I was studying dentistry, I remember in the second year, the Israeli occupation have launched 2012 second aggression over Gaza. And at that time, I was like a little bit grown up, so almost 19 years old. I started volunteering in hospitals and schools that were like transferred to become shelters for people. And in that environment within the aggression, I was able to realize the direct effect of the Israeli violence and aggression over families, like killing them and all of that. But at the same time, with changing everything, like the family losing their home, the violence imposed on them and all of that, how it affected them. The inter-family bonds between families themselves, and how violence embarked and increased within such times and even after in more broader sense. So like getting in contact with such things made me more and more focusing on that, because I believe that it's very difficult to reach liberation of Palestine and Palestinian people with having part of the community, like maybe half of it, under oppression. So I focused on putting both sides of the community in equal space and also away of any oppression, so they can focus on the one and most important oppression that we're facing, which is the Israeli violence. And through the years, I went from like volunteering in charities, in psychological support, in well-being, and sometimes in like health-related stuff and awareness sessions, to starting my first campaign in Gaza, which was about investing in families that face domestic violence, but using a 4-pillar technique, which focused on putting them in economic, educational things, so they can start their economic project as a family, not only the woman, because when I did it for only the women faced more oppression and aggression and abuse, because they had the money, they worked for it, but they didn't own it in that sense. And the second thing was to put them in health, nutritional related awareness sessions with one of the organizations I used to volunteer with. Third one was psychological well-being, gender, like domestic violence, all of those themes. Educational place also at one of the organizations I used to volunteer at. And the last one was focusing more on the family itself and the interpersonal relationships in a more focused way. And from that, like I was able to tackle and examine how those families have built a better like family relationship, less oppression time by time, with things improving, and also their economic situation improving, and their awareness level increasing, and having a kind of someone near you who can monitor or like check on you from time to time. So that was very successful, and from that time I decided to do my master's degree in social anthropology at Durham. It was a massive career shift, because I was planning to do surgery before that, and I wanted to be like a surgeon, plastic surgeon, to help people in Gaza, and at the same time working on politics and sociology. But that wasn't feasible, because like in this time you have to focus on one thing, because it will take all of your time and life, and to make it with a full heart, make it more impactful for the people. So I focused more on the social and political bits, and from that I started activism in a proper way, a full time on social media, on sites in Gaza. I used to make different awareness sessions, but more of talking way, if I make sense, rather than me just telling them what must be done and giving them theoretical stuff. And it mainly focused on storytelling. So I was collecting stories from the community of oppression, what happened, and sometimes of oppression and how it was dealt in a bad way or in a good way. Then I present those stories in front of them. We discuss them. We analyze what happened, the issues, and possible solutions. And after that, we created a kind of action group to focus on the main 3 areas of problems that we found through all the stories we shared in the past. And we focused on 3 main action groups. So we had around more than 300 participants, new leaders, activists. Around 100 of them focused on the action group of changing the criminal law. And criminal law in Gaza is British criminal law, so it's from the British Mandate, 1938. It's the law governing us in Gaza. And Sharia law, it was Egyptian Sharia law, so from 1954. So it's too old to be dealing with such a complex community as we have in Gaza. And it needed to be changed and progressed according to the most progressed interpretations of Quran, to make sure that the family integrity is saved. And the third area that they focused on was about awareness and how to raise it and all of that. And we started working on those 3 action groups together until the 7th of October, where everything was very brutally damaged in the worst way. Like the 7th of October wasn't the first incident that affected the research or activism. In 2023 itself, in May, Israel launched aggression over Gaza for 8 days. It was very horrible, and it affected my research. It affected my activism. I paused everything for about a month because I wasn't able myself to function, and the community wasn't able to be active towards such thing in a time where other like survival instincts are under attack. However, we were able to like bring ourselves together again after a little bit of time and working on that while tackling and understanding how Israeli violence is affecting us on the ground and also the activism in that sense. However, in this genocide, it's becoming very difficult, very, very different. It's still ongoing for more than 10 months now. The femicide, killing more than 11,000 women, is unspeakable. Killing more than 16,000 children is unimaginable, like atrocious crime that didn't happen like in the modern life at all. Like I have never counted such number of children killed in one specific thing, not to mention that in the first 2 months of this genocide, the experts have said that the amount of children killed in Gaza were more than all the children killed in the last 4 years all over the globe. And that was only the first 2 months. So imagine with the number we're having right now. So like things that's happening now on a very like large genocidal scale, thinking of what we used to be doing is not relatable anymore, and that we need to work on more like broader and larger scales, mainly with the entities that supporting Israel and allowing them to commit further and further crimes in this ongoing genocide. So like UK, USA, and such countries, Germany also.
Yeah. I just want to say, like, while you explain about all the work that you have done, it mesmerized me here, like someone like you know, who started off into doing dentistry, then found yourself doing something quite different from that. And it obviously has shaped you and led you to where you are right now. I just want to ask quite a broad question. Obviously, I'll narrow it down as I ask, but, you know, right now, obviously, things are completely different. Women's rights have been stripped from top to bottom. You're all the way here in Newcastle, in the UK. How are you right now able to continue your activism and your support for women all the way there while being away from them, if you are able to? And if not, in what ways can potential solutions be put in place to help these women there right now who are suffering from unimaginable things that we can't even, you know, imagine, like picture in our heads? So would you like to explain what specific issues right now the women are going through in Gaza and how they can be supported?
The amount of suffering women in Gaza are going through now is like beyond anyone's ability to explain. However, I'll try to mention some of them, not all, because no space would be enough for that. Starting with like simple things like Israeli blockage over Gaza that restricted over this genocide. We've been having the Israeli blockade over Gaza, a legal one, over the last 18 years. And in this genocide, they stopped water, electricity, and food. And so they stopped like medical supplies and everything. And from the medical supplies or like the personal supplies, we can count the period pads. So women, girls from very young age to very older ages, they were prevented from having like normal care when they are having the period. The painkillers, so if you're having a very painful period, you wouldn't have painkiller because it doesn't exist. Israel doesn't allow them to access Gaza. And to go further on that, we're talking about women, like we had more than 50,000 women and pregnant women in Gaza. And those women had to go to C-sections, which is the cutting through 7 layers of a woman's body to get a child or 2 children, God knows. and they had to do that, which is one of the most painful surgeries like in the world, and the complications of it are so difficult. They had to go through this very painful surgeries without anesthesia, so without any type of pain relief. So they had to feel how they were cut through by doctors trying to save the life of a mom and a baby, but in a very, very, very painful way. Other things that women, children, and men had to go through is that they had to get their own limbs amputated without anesthetics. And this is, we're talking about children from like 1-year-old, less and above. We're talking about elderly who might like die in the procedure. And we're talking about people with immune issues and maybe chronic diseases that wouldn't be able to withstand that. And there are multiple videos of instances. So you can find like videos of women having C-sections and screaming, they and their doctors, while doing the procedure over them, because they can imagine how painful it is, and the woman is screaming, and so their doctor. There are like videos of children having their limbs amputated, also viral on social media, everyone can see. Unfortunately, there's a child of a father who's a medic, and the father had to amputate the 4 limbs of his own child, 8 years old, and the child couldn't withstand the pain because there's no anesthesia on a side, but there is no painkillers after that or within that. So the child died of a pain, and there's a video of the father crying and weeping after that. There are also videos of a child, 16-year-old girl, that her uncle had to amputate her leg because they were surrounded by tanks in their home, and he's orthopedic, but he didn't have anything like surgical, no anesthetics, nothing at all. He had to cut her limb on video with scissors and kitchen knife and such things. So we're talking about levels of very immense physical pain that women and like the rest of the community are going through, but we're focusing now on women. Other things that they had to go through, we're talking about more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli occupation right now, 47,000. Like 70% of them are women and children. So the femicide in itself is an issue. BDicide in itself is a huge issue. But then you have to think that those men who were killed are either fathers, so the women have become orphans, or they are like husbands, so they are widows now, or their sons and daughters. So they have to go through a very immense pain of losing their own kids, while at the same time, they are women, Palestinian women, not any women, and they have a responsibility to preserve the family and the community in such atrocious time. So while facing all of that, becoming a widow, losing their own kids and losing their home and being injured themselves, they have to also feed their babies if they had a baby. They have to make food for the rest of the children of the family, could be their own survived children, or they could be like her sisters, like orphaned sisters, sons and daughters and such thing. And they have to take that responsible role immediately without even having the time to process and grieve. At the same time, they're doing those tasks in a very, like now it's very hot in Gaza, very humid. They have to do that, and if they had like tents or improvised something like a tent, temperature in Gaza is about 35 to 40 degrees now, and in a tent it's more like 10 degrees more than that because the temperature soak inside. And they have to do that while they don't have any type of cooking gas, which we are all used on. We don't use like wood in our lives. We didn't do that, but they have to do it now. They have to fetch for food, fetch for wood, fetch for water, unclean water, not like suitable for a human consumption, but they have to do that and to use it to feed herself and the children. They have to do laundry on hand, they have to do dishwash in hand, and all of those things on a daily basis, while at the same time, they have to be mindful because each second, one of their family could be lost forever, just killed. Each second, Israel might tell them that they have to displace from a place to a place, losing more of their belongings that they hardly were able to find and bring from aid or other resources, and have to catch whoever they have and run from a place to a place, hoping for safety. That's for sure they're not gonna face, because in each place they go, new massacres, like very bad massacres are happening. So just to imagine even one aspect of what women are going through is unimaginable. So imagine that all of those things are happening together. It's not like a sole action or a sole thing that would happen in a time and things would wait for them. No, nothing would wait. Everything would come together. And this is like we're talking about women of all ages, so children. My friends used to volunteer, like I and my friend used to volunteer in shelters and hospitals in aggressions in a small team, just trying to help in whatever we can, even just to accompany people and talk with them. And I contacted her at the beginning of the genocide multiple times, and she told me that she's still doing that. And in one, she's in Khan Younis, and in one of her visits, she went to Nasser Hospital. Nasser Hospital is the one in Khan Younis, and there, while she was walking between like beds and sick people, she saw a beautiful little child alone on the ground on a blanket or something, and the girl had one amputated leg and one amputated arm, and the girl was alone and she had a bleeding from beneath her thighs. So my friend immediately went to the nurse and told her, please check the girl, she's bleeding. The nurse checked which girl she's talking about, and she told her, this is Sama, a 13-year-old child. She's the only surviving wounded surviving child with no surviving family, and so she's alone. She's an orphan, and she's 13. She had a hand and a leg amputated. And the nurse said that the bleeding couldn't be from the injury because it's farther away. It's not a place of the injury, but she said it could be the period. So let's check. My friend went and she did the warming thing, asked her a little bit questions. And then after that, she told her, do you know the period? And Sama said, yeah, I know it. My mom told me about it. And my friend asked her, did you have it before? And she said, no, I didn't. So my friend tried to explain to this little girl in any way she would be able to explain to her well that she might be having a period. And the girl burst into crying and screaming because she said, I'm in a unaffordable pain because of the amputations and there's no anesthetics or painkillers. But also I need my mom, I need my dad, and she had none of them. And then my friend calmed her down a little bit and then decided to go for a change, for the girl to change and put some pads. And then she had to have a conversation with the nurse because there was no period pads and they had to improvise something. They brought cotton, gauze together, and they went to the toilet. The girl crying told them, I can't do it. I have only one arm and one leg. I can't put them myself. I need someone in the toilet to help me out. So the nurse went inside and helped her putting it correctly. And then they went out and my friend left Sama promising that she will come in the next day, bringing some clothes, anything for period that would help her. She would come with some toys and stuff for the little girl. And she asked the nurse to take care of Sama because she doesn't have anyone. And the nurse promised her of that. My friend then left and she told me the story. And a few hours later, while we were preparing some charity for the young girl to be sent to her in the next day, Israeli occupation army have launched invasion over in Nasser Hospital. It was totally surrounded. Some people were able to go outside. Many people were injured, and those injured, many of them were killed in the Israeli invasion of Nasser Hospital. And many of the doctors and patients were kidnapped by the Israeli occupation. Sama we don't know anything about her now because since the Israeli invasion of Nasser Hospital, we heard nothing, and my friend wasn't able to find her. After the Israeli invasion ended on Nasser Hospital, only people bulldozed to the ground in their patient clothes, and their catheters and cannulas were found underneath the ground, along with medics wearing medical scrubs and having their hands cuffed beneath their backs, and they all were killed at that time. And the destiny of Sama, like herself, we don't know it. She might have been able to escape to Rafah, so to the south. But if she did that, then who would have taken care of her? Who would have brought her food? Who would have changed her period pads? Who would have done anything for her? There's no one. And even if she went to Rafah and she found this stuff, 2 weeks later, Israel have bombarded, invaded Rafah and asked people to go to the north, a little bit to the north. And she would have to displace by herself in one leg. A little girl alone would have to displace to another place, not knowing if she would have any haven, any safety, any food or anything. This is if she lived. If not, we don't know. And her situation, as a child, is the situation of at least 17,000, according to the UNICEF, children, orphaned children with no parents now, who are moving alone in the most scary and genocidal place in the world, in Gaza, while fetching for everything and safety. And she's also among more than 9,000 children who are now having amputations in their limbs, and God knows what happened to her, and also what happened to other children who are facing same destinies as she has.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as you explain in that, I'm sitting here in my home, nice and safe, at ease and at comfort. But while I hear this, it just makes me run out of words. As we're hearing this, psychologically, it affects you immensely, because you think, how can there be such, bad happening right now there? But it's happening, and right now as we speak, God knows what else is happening. You're here, obviously you're hearing what your friends are saying, and we are seeing through videos, through social media, Instagram, Facebook, what's happening there. But as someone who's there right now and facing all this up front, would you be able to explain on the behalf of your friends and family who are currently there, psychologically, how is this making them? How are they getting through each day? How are they waking up in the morning? How are they putting their head down to sleep? How has these past 10 months psychologically changed these people?
The only confirmed thing is that those genocidal acts have changed us forever and permanently. So whatever we were before this genocide, we're not the same after it or within it. Talking psychologically, we need to remember also that we have people who have psychological issues and disorders, and the medications for them don't enter Gaza since the beginning of the genocide. So we're talking about people getting into seizures, getting into worse issues because of their psychological illnesses that were simple thing because they take the medications before the genocide, but now they are either so much suffering, or their beloved people are so much suffering because of that, or they are just dying because of their treatable illnesses. Mm-hmm. The other thing to remember is that I can't imagine the life of my friends and family in Gaza right now. Every single night you would have to go inside a place, not because you have the time to relax, but because if you moved, you will be targeted immediately. Doesn't mean that if you didn't move, you wouldn't be, but this is how we're trying at least to work with the life around us. In the next morning, whenever the sun rises, they have to do so many things. They have to go and remove the rubble, to treat the people they love, maybe their families, maybe their neighbors, from underneath the rubble and save their lives if anyone was alive. If not, to bury them respectfully so the dogs and cats wouldn't eat them, because they have eaten a lot of our beloved people. Then they would have to go and fetch for water, for food, for clothes, for bread, for like so many things every single day, in a very intense, in a very hot weather, in a very bad situation where they are themselves are injured, and all of them are losing weight. Like most of people in Gaza have lost at least from 10 to 35 kilograms in the last few months. And it's a lot. It's malnutrition. It's very bad. And they're sick. Multiple of them have like communicable diseases like hepatitis A, cholera, and so much outbreaks of other diseases. Most of them are not diagnosed because like the testing capability that we have now are almost finished. Even in hospitals, they can hardly do any tests. So those people, while they are like fetching for everything, trying to care of their own children, running from a place to a place, or even just removing the rubble, they do all of that with a very like tense psychological status, like burdened by fear, burdened by loss, burdened by like desire to rest, desire to have a little bit of a breath, because they're all the time they're breathing bombardment, they're breathing bombarded houses and the rebels. They're not even breathing something good, they're breathing sickness all the time. And all of this is like intense, very intense. Then add on that, because people are in a very intense mood, in a very anxious mood all the time, there's also there's no cold water, there's no ice cream, there's nothing that makes you feel a little bit relieved of the heat around you. So all of those people who are angry and mad all the time and very worried, they would have even clashes in between them, like they would have issues, even like inter-family or like into the community itself, and that would like build up and build up and build up, making their psychological status very torn and very, very tired and very, very bad. However, it's like the psychological bit of it is a privilege now, because they're actually getting killed and getting severely injured. And like multiple of those who are like having all of those psychological burden and all of those issues, they are at the same time taking care of other family members who are either injured, who have chronic diseases like kidney failure, and they can't have renal dialysis. They have like cancer patients, and those cancer patients are not taking their medications. And they are on social media, calling for people to come and help them, calling for people to allow them to like cross the border that's now controlled by the Israeli occupation so they can have a treatment, hoping that they would survive. And such things. So like even to imagine what a single human being in Gaza is going through is too immense and so intense. And sometimes it's not like an adult who's dealing with all of that. Sometimes they're children. So maybe there's a video of an 8-year-old child who's taking care of 6 sisters of him, all younger than himself, and among them a baby. His parents, both of them were killed, and he's the one like looking for food for them, taking care of them. If they have to be displaced from a place to a place, he would have to make a decision. An 8-year-old would have to make a decision. It's not because he loved that, but because he had to. There is nothing else to be done. Or institutions, even domestic violence institutions, all of them are damaged. Orphanage institutions, all of them are damaged. Like we had before the genocide more than 26,000 orphans. Now we don't know anything about them. Not to mention the more than 25,000 new orphans that now we're having them at the time, according to the orphan statistics, different than the Oxfam one. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about a very difficult situation. I remember a friend of mine who's a psychologist, and he was like trying to explain to us the amount of fears that they have to like think of at such times. And my friend in Gaza, and they had in the house where they were like sheltering together more than 30 children with their families. Just imagine how like concentrated and intense the situation was. And while they were sitting in their home, in the place where they were sheltering, Israeli invasion started like suddenly, as it usually does. And they started bombarding every single place and walking around them. And like they had Apache, F-35, and quadricopter and like tanks shooting everywhere. Mm-hmm. And the flights were like just going into the windows, sometimes going inside and outside. Anything moves or gives a sound, they would immediately shoot at. So the family was not just very scared and unable to tolerate and deal with the like outdoor and indoor situation, but they had to deal with a very specific thing. When a child is scared, what do? They scream. It's a reaction. They had to teach children to be scared in a different way than screaming, because screaming means being alive, and being alive means shooting and a murder immediately. And just to think how like thick and heavy what every single person of them had to think of, had to deal with the children in such situation, is very, very, very crazy. And this is, like I said, it's a psychological thing. It's a privilege now. We don't even like go into such conversations because we're facing murder and death in every single second of our lives. And just to mention another thing that women and men are now very much fearing, and we used to be. Like, I remember since the first Israeli aggression over Gaza in 2008, when I was in Gaza, we were very much afraid of the ground invasion, because we know the history in Nakba and after Nakba. We know that Israeli soldiers, female and male soldiers, using systematically sexual violence, rape as a weapon for the war and for the aggression over Palestinians. And because we knew that, we were very afraid and anticipated. We thought of that. So over all the psychological things you will be thinking of, you will also be afraid of that. And then while you are afraid of that, you will be listening to documentations that the Shifa hospital, when it was ground invaded, they have raped women, they have stripped naked them, they have sexually assaulted them and harassed them, and not just women, men also. And then in different places of ground invasion, some stories would become like more viral and more repetitive of the same violence acts of the Israeli soldiers over them. And then you would find another documentations in places where Israel have kidnapped more than 21,000 Palestinians, 21,000 Palestinians they have kidnapped. The world doesn't care because Palestinians are not humans for them. They have kidnapped them in different detention camps or torture camps, worse than concentration camps. And in those torturing camps, they have like amused in their sarcastic way and saddest way, the different ways of torturing them. And among the ways they tortured our people, our beloved people, talking about women and men of all ages, so from elderly to children. And there is a baby also. We're sure about a baby. A soldier said that they kidnapped the baby. And like, at least we know that there is a baby among other so many children. They are taken in their like those places. They're kept in places where they have to see, face, witness, and try in themselves the torture. And among the types of the torture is sexual torture, where in documentations by UN and others human rights organizations, they have documented that Israeli female and male soldiers are using rape as a weapon against the Palestinian, a genocidal weapon. They are using sticks, metal sticks, heated or electric, putting them inside the back of women and men for minutes or more, until they bleed and faint sometimes. And this doesn't just happen while they're naked and torture themselves. This happens while the rest of the like captives and the hostages, Palestinian hostages, are watching it. So they are tortured by knowing that they're raped, and people are watching that. And the rest are tortured by knowing that, by seeing the torture and knowing that they're the next to be tortured. Another ways of torturing the Palestinians is using dogs. It trained dogs to rape Palestinians. What the hell Israel is doing? How they are using like unimaginable ways of torture that even in novels, people were not able to think such like evilly and certainly to find such ways. They've used it, like practically they've done it. And we're talking about different ages, women and men. And in some situations, physical, like rape have happened. And in other situations, like what's happening from like 7th of October till now, of rape and torture and all of that, sexual assaults is not new. Israel have been using that for the last more than 76 years for the Palestinians in checkpoints, in prisons or captivity areas. They have been using that with the ground invasion in West Bank, where they go to a home, kidnap some of the family members, like sexually and physically assault the rest and rape some of them. So this is like a practice, and they are now using it again, but it's not a new thing, but it's more and more scary because it's happening on a very large scale and in front of the whole world. The whole world is watching what's happening to the Palestinians, but they don't care. They don't care at all, because we're not white, we're not Western, we're Palestinians, and our lives are not counted. And unfortunately, with the increase of intensity, torture, and madness and massacres of the Israeli occupation army over Gaza, like in the last 10 months till now, each time they're increasing it, it's each time the world is decreasing their interest in it. They're not responding to it as they used to be in the beginning. Even like demonstrations, even like all types of activism, even on social media, unfortunately, they're not as active as they were at the beginning, although Israeli soldiers are more active than they were in the beginning. And this decline in care and interest and activism, I don't know the reason of it. Like, there are some psychological reasons of it, but if it does exist, why doesn't it affect the Israelis? Why are they becoming more and more interested in the damage and massacring and torturing of us? Why does it only affect people who are supporting the good causes and being an end of a genocide, a ceasefire, and such things? And from that, I'm calling everyone. We need to move. We need to keep doing action. We need to change the status quo. Like here in the UK, the Labour Party have won the elections, and we need to put the Labour Party in position to be accounted for their acts, and they call for like more like atrocious crimes over the Palestinians by Keir Starmer and others. So to account them, but also to force them to call for a ceasefire, to force them not just to call. They have ability. They have the ability to punish Israel. They have the ability to call Israel that they're doing like atrocious crimes and war crimes. They can do that. And they can force Israel, not just call them, by different ways, among them stopping, like supporting them in arms and money, among them stopping stopping the relationship, economic and other relationships, military relationships, but also to an extent of embarking a war over Israel if they don't stop and seize this genocide immediately. All of those countries are willing to do that, and they've done it with other countries, not the Western loved countries. And they can do it to Israel only if they wanted to, only if they want the genocide to end, which doesn't seem to be what they want. But the community must force them to do that, because it's the only hope that we have right now.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to ask, how hopeful are you for change to come to Gaza?
Not hopeful at all. However, saying that I'm not hopeful because looking at things in a factual way and objective way, I would be crazy if I was hopeful in any way or matter. However, I still act in a way that I'm hopeful. Not because I am, but because I have a responsibility to do action for the people in Gaza, for the people in Palestine, and for all of those like suffering from any kind of oppression, like in Sudan and in Congo and different places. So we have a responsibility to stay strong and keep fighting, although and despite that we know that maybe we don't have any hope, but we have to. It's a responsibility. So I hope everyone would be thinking in the same way, even if they don't have hope. We have a responsibility to keep working because we are privileged. Even myself here, I'm privileged. I'm working or acting or trying without losing anything. I'm not losing a family here, like there I could. I'm not losing a limb. I'm not losing any part of my body. I'm not gonna be kidnapped by Israelis. Maybe they would here, but I'm not like for sure like in Gaza. I'm not gonna be kidnapped by them. I'm not gonna be tortured. So the price of my activism is privilege. It's nothing compared to what they're losing every single second in Gaza. And we have to think in that way. Everything we're doing is out of a privilege. So at least we have to be doing it because it's the least we can do.
Yes. And just to end this podcast, after you speak about what's happening, because I obviously have seen of you over the past year at many events talking about what's happening in Gaza, the minute you put the mic down, you walk away. How do you go along with life?
Like I don't feel like the life is a life anymore, because each single minute I would be holding my phone looking at the news, because every single minute something is happening. We're losing someone. At the first few months I wasn't even able to eat because I felt privileged to be able to eat, and it is a privilege because in Gaza most of them they can't. Starvation rate and famine is beyond imagination globally and historically. They have never been into such limits. I've been also sometimes like, because I know that women when they're having period they don't take pain like painkillers because they don't have them. So sometimes I chose not to take them because it's the only thing I would feel their pain. And I knew that I'm privileged because I made the choice. I was in a home in my bed covered by blankets. It's too painful, but it's nothing compared to the pain they're going through while they're running from a place to a place with the pain of it, without having anything to use for the blood to absorb it, with having to do like all the daily exhausting things that they don't used to do. Like when women and girls having period in my community, we ask them to go and rest. They don't work for that like 5 to 7 days until they feel like they want to do something. Otherwise they can't rest. They can even take some absent days from university or school for that. So we're not used on this type of labor and tireless things. And the same for myself. Like I tried in so many ways to feel the way they're feeling, but I can't. I'm far away. My sky is a beautiful sunny one, and it doesn't have any F-16 or F-35. Doesn't have any like big machines that's killing me and my beloved people every single second. I don't have that reality around me. Like physically, I don't feel it, but emotionally, psychologically, I'm living there all the time. And even talking about myself is a privilege, and sometimes like I don't prefer it as a topic because I'm not the focus. They are the focus, and shifting the focus from them to our minimal like byproduct suffering is sometimes very intense and not fair, because even if it was like too big, it's nothing compared to their suffering on a daily hourly level compared to us. So thank you for the question, but it's even difficult to express and talk about that itself. And rather than that, I try to do whatever I can. I know that political action is more important than anything else, but I try to focus on things I can do, like either like sending money, charity, and such things, or focusing on issues that are less like attentive by other people. For instance, we know that like at least 40 children have been killed of a famine and starvation in the last 9 months, although we didn't have any malnutrition. It was below zero before this genocide. And because of that, like I know that there is like a direct effect of murder by the Israelis, and there's indirect one as the famine. And sometimes those malnourished children sometimes are people that we can save, because it's not a direct thing. It might need more money, it might need more logistics, but like at the end of the day, it could be solved. So from that perspective, because of my background in medical sciences, I contacted some of the doctors I know in Gaza and still working on the ground who face and receive some like babies, malnourished, and sometimes would be like dying in the hospital, and they have pronounced some of them death. before like I contacted them, and I asked them each baby that comes to the hospital with nourishment, and they only like a milk would make them survive, please just forward that to me. We wouldn't let them die. This is the least that we can do. Those are like, they could be manageable. If we were able to reach them, please let me know, and we will provide them milk, whatever was the cost for that, because for a month, for 2, for 3, they might survive. And since that time, alhamdulillah, we're trying a little by little to support specifically babies in the north to have a chance to live if they only suffer from malnourishment, and it could be like curable if they had the milk. But still like a very like small efforts, because it's very difficult for aid to get into the north, and there's multiple, if not all, supplies are absent in the north of Gaza. But we're trying, and this is what I'm asking everyone to do, just to try, even if it was minimal, because it helped in a way, even if some. And thank you so much, Elif. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry to take a lot of time.
Thank you so much for your time, Hala. And I hopefully this podcast will educate and help people understand what is really happening on ground in Gaza and what they can do, how they can contribute, and like you said, in any little way it can help. But yeah, thank you so much. And would you like to say anything else? Would you like to add anything else?
No, thank you so much, Elif. I just wish everyone would stay strong and would stay supportive, because we need that. We need them everywhere. And people in Gaza are actually feeling the solidarity and feeling the power of people outside. So whenever you're doing it, you're not unseen. You're seen by people in Gaza, and they are the most important people to be seeing you now.
Thank you so much.